Thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'm looking forward to our talk about resumes today. We will save some time for questions at the end, and you can also put some questions in the chat. And I will introduce myself, and then I will let Colleen introduce herself because she'll be the one that's frantically in the background answering stuff probably because I'll be talking. So my name is Noelle Kreidler, and I am an associate director in the Career Center, and I focus on career development. And I work primarily with business and entrepreneurship students. And I've been with Santa Clara for about 4.5 years and love working with students, love the topic of resumes. So I'm excited for today's conversation, and I'll let Colleen introduce herself real quick, and then we'll jump right in.
Hi, everyone. Colleen Withers. I'm a director here of the Career Development Team in the Career Center, and so happy you're all here.
All righty. Well, here's what we're going to cover today. We are going to spend a lot of time on resume tips and suggestions, and then we'll shift it over to some Career Center and other resources that you might want to take advantage of. And then we will go through some recruiting timelines because we did this conversation about a month and a half ago, and students were really interested in kind of what those look like. And then we'll have some final thoughts and Q&A, and I'll probably stop from time to time just to see if anybody has any questions with different topics, and then we'll move along and save some for time for some questions at the end. So that's what we'll do. So just as you kind of update your resume and you consider, what you should be doing, there are some things that we wanted to make sure that we pointed out. So 4 really main things. What do you need to update? How are you going to do that? We're going to talk a lot about different ways to update. And then who are you sending your resume to? And then some things that you want to avoid when you're thinking about updating your resume and sending it out to folks. So what do you need to update? Certainly, if your content is, older, like older experiences, maybe you could get rid of some of that. Also, depending on where you are in your college education so far. So certainly if you're a freshman or a sophomore, you probably do want to keep your high school information on there. About the time you become a junior or a senior, for sure senior, usually your high school information goes away. So those are some things that you would want to consider taking off. And then there's some information that you might need to update. So, you got your GPA updated as of the end of last quarter, and or maybe you took classes over the summer, so you might need to update your GPA. And general rule of thumb is if your GPA is 3.0 or above, you should put it on your resume, and if it's not, you should not. Might be a little different for folks that are maybe getting into opportunities that are more on the consulting side or investment banking or potentially accounting jobs. Usually those maybe have a 3.5 or higher. So just some things to keep in mind there. Some of you may have had an internship over the summer, or if you didn't have an internship, you had a job of some kind. So you might need to add that information to your resume. And then also, if you've changed your major or your graduation date has changed, or now you know for sure that you're going to graduate when you would put that information on there. And then relevant coursework. So maybe you've completed some courses either over the summer or you completed some courses last year that you did not put on your resume that might help you potentially to get an internship for 2026. So that might be something that you could think of and of adding, and then also potentially projects that you've completed. So some of you may not have as much work experience in what you're studying and what you're trying to get a job doing when you graduate or when you go for your next internship, but you've done some projects that are related and that might help you get that next job. And then, of course, new awards or certifications that you might have earned. So some of you may have been completing some certifications over the summer. You would certainly want to add those. And then for those of you that are kind of more on the technical side and in fields that involve maybe coding or automation or any kind of data analysis, you might want to think about adding a GitHub link so that folks can see your work. So those are just some things that you might want to consider, and there may be others, but that is a pretty good rundown of what I would consider the most important things that you would want to think about updating. So then there's a whole bunch of things about kind of around how are you going to do this. So let me just start running through those. So one, we always recommend if you don't have a master resume yet, you might want to create one for yourself. And a master resume is just a whole laundry list of everything that you've done. It may not be everything that you're going to send in with an application, but it would be everything that you've done. So you kind of have a running list. And it includes all your skills and experience in one document. It's not the document that you're going to send out to a potential employer. It's the document that allows you to keep track of everything. And believe me, the older you get, and I'm getting up there, it's hard to remember all those things that you've done. So I really recommend, especially as you're a student, you probably should be updating your resume maybe every 6 months or so, or maybe even every quarter. But as you get to be my age and maybe a little younger than me, maybe once a year is probably enough time. But I have a running master resume that I just keep everything. So you won't forget experiences, and it makes it easier for you to create a resume that's more tailored to the individual jobs that you go after. So that's one way you might think about kind of how to update your resume. Another is to use what we call accomplishment statements. So the acronym that we really like in the Career Center is something called CAR, and it stands for context, action, and result. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. But context is really where you kind of describe the situation or the problem that you're addressing when you're writing your information on your resume. And then I want to know specifically, if I'm a recruiter, what you actually did and then what result you produced. So you don't want to have a resume that says responsibilities included and then a bunch of stuff. You actually want to take one of those responsibilities and talk about it powerfully. And where you can quantify that information, the better. So here's an example of what that might look like. So the context in this case was lack of formal training for new employees. And the action was created a manual with frequently asked questions for new employees. And the result was efficiently trained new employees. So that sounds great, but what's in the box below is a little bit more powerful because it really takes that information to another level by adding some numbers. So with 15 frequently asked questions and a 20% increase in customer satisfaction. So that's the kind of stuff where you can on your resume, you want to be able to add that information. If you do a good job of putting that together and thinking it through on your resume, you're going to help yourself in the interview because you'll get asked questions that relate to some things that you can talk about more powerfully if you've really thought through them a little bit better. Another thing is that you want to make sure to use powerful action words. So there's just an example of some of the action words that you might use in some of the information that you talk about on your resume. And our recommendation, and this is very typical, is that you would start each of your resume bullet points or each of your statements in your resume with an action verb. So you don't need to say I trained or I launched. You just start with trained or launched or tested because the whole page is about you. Your name is at the top, so you don't need to say I. You also, another way that you might think about how to update your resume is to choose headers that really showcase your experience powerfully. So we've given you kind of a list of headers on the side here, um, that you might think about. For sure, education would definitely be on your resume. In some cases, relevant coursework might help you, or projects. You might want to highlight volunteer work or leadership experience. So some of these headings are optional, and some of them are pretty typical on a resume, and especially since you're in school, education would definitely be a relevant topic, as would experience or work experience. So on the right-hand side of the slide is just an example of how somebody put together their information. So they started with their professional summary, which we'll talk about in a second, and then education, and then their projects, and then they get down to their work experience. For some of you, your work experience might go before that. You might not have projects. So each resume is a little bit different and depends on what your skills and experiences are and what you have to offer. You also want to kind of to that point, you also want to organize your resume effectively. So as a student, what really qualifies you for an internship is the fact that you're in college. So you really do want to have your education towards the top, either after a summary or right after your name and all of that information. And then you may kind of go into different places. Like this is an example of a resume for somebody who is more on the biology and mathematics side of things, a little bit more on the technical, potentially with laboratory skills and computer skills. So this person wanted to highlight that information up front for the job they were applying for. So that gives you kind of an idea of how somebody might structure their resume. You also might think about a summary statement. So a summary statement is like an overarching summary of everything that you've done to date. But it really focuses on the qualities or skills and experience that highlight you for the job that you're applying for. So you don't want to put everything in there. It's 3 to 5 statements at the top, and it goes before your education. But it's what's going to entice the reader to keep going, because I think the thing that you want to keep in mind is while you're going to spend a lot of time doing a lot of work on getting your resume just so, the person reading it on the other end is probably going to take at most 15 seconds, which is really terrible, but that's what happens. So you want to get their attention. And for some people, a summary statement would really help you do that. So we give you kind of some examples that might be important to think about. So if you want to highlight something that's really important, that might be a reason to have a summary statement. Or maybe you are, wanting to be in investment banking or something like that, and your degree is in biology. You probably want to explain why that's so and what experience you bring to the table. So you'd probably have a summary statement. And then maybe you have a lot of experience related to the job. That really helps. And then later on in life, you're probably not old enough yet, but later on in life, are you making a career change of some kind? So that might be helpful. Um, the last time I applied for a job and got it, which was this job a few years ago, I was making a career change. So my background has been in HR, and I definitely had a summary statement at the top of my resume so that people would know that in my past I had worked in higher education and had that skill set. So that's just some examples of why you might want to do that. And then here are some other statements that are kind of similar, like a professional summary is really the same as a summary statement or qualifications. So these are some other things that summary statements are called. And then we also provided a couple of examples. The first example is around somebody who's going for kind of a marketing oriented role. And then the second example is of somebody that's looking for a biology type of role. So you get a sense of how they might be different, but how they both, really call out the person's experience related to the job that they're applying for. So before I go into who you're sending your resume to, I'm just going to see, I think there are some things in the chat. Is there anything you should address right now, Colleen?
I'd say keep going.
All right, I'm going to do it. So the next thing is to think about who are you sending your resume to? So you really need to know the following. Who is your audience? What are their hiring needs? And then how do your skills and experience align with what they're looking for? And one way to do that that's really important is to read the job description really thoroughly. So that would be the first thing I would tell you to do, is to read the job description. But I also want you to keep in mind that there is a tool that recruiters use that's called an applicant tracking system. For those of you who are not familiar with applicant tracking systems, they are software systems that employers use to manage the hiring process. And they basically allow a company to collect and sort and rank resumes based on different types of criteria. So they'll literally program their system to look for certain things on a person's resume. So that's the part of the process, for especially for larger companies, where there is not necessarily a person involved right in the beginning of looking at your resume. Your resume gets parsed through first. And so that's why you really want to make sure that you're looking at the job description. So you're using words, obviously, that apply to you, but that are also in the job description to help you get selected and sorted so that you do get to the more personal side of the hiring process. Um, I I remember when I worked for Intuit a long time ago, they had just started using an applicant tracking system, and they would get 200 or 20,000 resumes a day, sometimes for different jobs. And there's just no way one human or many humans can get through that many. So they've really come up, companies have come up with ways to go through and figure out how do we parse and get the folks that we think are most related to what we're hiring for. So you want to make sure you get into that pile. And one way is to read the job description. And we're going to talk about another tool that our office has available to you to help you with that as well in just a few minutes. So job descriptions, they help you tailor your resume. Um, they they also indicate kind of what an applicant tracking system might be looking for. And so these are just examples of things you might pay attention to. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but wherever you can, you want to include what you have to offer on your resume that relates to the job description. And this is just an example of, like, if I was reading through a job description, what I would circle. So I'd probably, obviously, if I was getting a degree in accounting and they wanted that, I would put that on there. I would add a relevant coursework section if I had taken a taxation class and mentioned that. I'd have my GPA on there. I'd say something about the CPA exam. I'd probably write my statements on my resume such that it indicated that I had good communication skills. So you get a sense of kind of what they might be looking for just by reading the job description. I'll move on to pitfalls to avoid. So definitely, you want to make sure you're really including results on your resume as much as possible. Probably can't do that for every statement, but there are some things that you can add. And even in jobs that are not necessarily considered an internship, you may have opened and closed a store, you may have served a certain number of customers a day, or you may have increased business by a certain percentage, or there are all kinds of different things that you could have done, even if it's not considered an internship for a job that you're going for in the future. Employers just really want to know, like, what kind of responsibility have you had? Definitely don't want to have more than a page if you're an undergraduate student. By the time you're a graduate student, for sure, and maybe a year to 2 years out of college, you could have more than one page. Um, don't have spelling and grammatical errors. I can't tell you how many times I have found errors on my own resume, even though I've looked at it many, many times. Get somebody with fresh eyes to look at your work. If you've seen it a lot, you're not going to catch it anymore. I've even had my name misspelled when I was in college, and that was in the day when you had to take your resumes down to get them printed out. So I had to go pay a bunch of money to redo them because I didn't catch it. You also want to make sure that you're formatting everything consistently. So, if you're bolding a title of a job for one job, you bold the title for every job. If you're underlining something, you underline it the same for everything. If you're italicizing your dates, you italicize all of your dates. So you want to make sure that you're consistent with your formatting. And really, the reason I think that makes a difference is if you're a recruiter, put your recruiter hat on, and you're spending 10 to 15 seconds on something, you don't want to think about, well, why is something bolded here and not there? You don't want them thinking that way. You want them thinking about what you have to offer in the role. Make sure you have the correct name for your degree. So this is a common error in the business school here at Santa Clara. Your degree as a business student is a Bachelor of Science in Commerce. Every single business student has that same degree name. And then you have a major that might be marketing, accounting, economics, whatever your major is. But make sure you have that Bachelor of Science in Commerce. And obviously, for every other college, having your degree name is correct. That's just the biggest error that I find working with students here at Santa Clara. Also, make your fonts easy to read. So we've given you some suggestions there. And then resumes are a little bit different. So you learn all your life to write kind of eloquently and maybe a little bit wordy for an essay or something like that. This is absolutely the opposite. You want to get down to the point. You're going to start each statement with an action verb, talk about the action you took, what results you produce, but you don't do a lot of flowery, wordy stuff. It's very, very concise and to the point. And you also don't use personal pronouns. So remember what I said earlier, your name is at the top of the resume, so you don't need to do that. It's actually redundant. And then also, you don't want to use the same resume for every single job unless every single job description is exactly the same, which that's probably not going to be the case. I can't think of any example of that myself right now. So make sure that you are tailoring your resume to the job. That does not mean that you need to completely throw out every resume and start from scratch. That means you need to think about, what can you use from resume to resume that's the same. Obviously, your degree is going to be the same. Maybe some of the job descriptions and things that you talk or job examples that you talk about are going to be the same, but maybe some are not. Like you might pull something from your master resume that you'll use for one job that you might not use for another. So make sure that you're applying with a fresh resume for each specific job. And then use templates that are easy to read by an ATS. The saddest thing in the world is to have all of the great experience that you have on your resume and you've taken a lot of time to put it together, and you have put something in place that nobody can read because it's put together on Canva, or you've used fonts that are hard, or something like that. So you want to get through the ATS. That is one of your big goals. So we recommend that you use Word and Google to create your documents, and that you always send your resume in a PDF format. So those are some of the pitfalls. There probably are others, but those are the big ones that we see from time to time. So I'm going to stop there and see, Colleen, if we should answer any questions.
Sure. One question came up about high school experience. If it's relevant, should they keep it on the resume?
Yes, if it's relevant, you should keep it on your resume for sure. I don't have more to say about that unless you have another question about it. But yes, keep it.
Other than that, I think you've answered them all.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, so let me go to some Career Center resources that we have available to you. So one is our job prep toolkit, and I'm going to take a risk here. This has a link. This is what it looks like. So you might want to check that out. And what's really cool about it is it's broken down into different categories. This is probably the page that's used the most on our website. And I'm talking to you from the Craft Your Personal Brand section, which is all about resumes. So there are some really cool things in here that we'll go into more detail about. But one is our resume templates and cover letter guide. So this is a really good guide that gives you information about fonts to use and how to write action. You use the CAR method to get some information about how to write the statements on your resume. There are a whole bunch of templates in here. Those of you who are on the younger side, this might be helpful. So some students will just take the template and just use it and populate with their own information. So there's a lot of good stuff in here that you might want to take advantage of. So that's a really, really good resource. And then going back to this, you can also schedule an appointment to have your resume reviewed by someone in the Career Center. And so we have that happens on Handshake. And you can see here I've gone to the Career Center tab. And then if you just click appointments, you can fill out a time. Appointments are 30 seconds. That would be really quick. 30 minutes in length. And we offer them, we usually schedule them in Handshake at least a month out for many of our folks that do those on site. So you can do them either in person or over Zoom. And I highly recommend that you get somebody from our office to look, but really anyone to look at your resume besides just you. Somebody that's going to give you, though, very specific, helpful feedback. Not just somebody that's going to say, yeah, that looks great, and then not give you what you need to know to kind of help you through making it better. Okay, so those are some just quick information that you can find in our resource section on our job prep toolkit. And then we also have a tool that some of you may already know about called Job Scan. And this tool allows you to really optimize your resume against a specific job description. And I'm going to give you a very brief demo in a second. And Santa Clara has the unlimited version, and you can find that information in the job prep toolkit where I just was a minute ago. And you'll just use or in your My SCU portal. There are lots of really great videos about job scan when you go into the job prep toolkit. So you might want to take a look at those first. And then if you're an alumni, you can email a request for access to the Career Center inbox, and the address is right here. And then in your email, just include this information so that we can get you set up with an account if you're an alum. Okay. So with that, I'm going to show you a demo here. All right. Let's see. So when you get in, I have a little bit of a different one than you'll have, but it looks fairly similar. And if I want to do a new scan, just going to click new scan. And I like to upload a resume that I cut and paste into this block. I have a couple in here that are ones that I've created inside of JobScan. I think the thing that probably I want to say first is JobScan does not create a resume for you. You need to create a resume, and then JobScan will help you make it better based on the job description that you pair with it. So it's not a resume creation tool. We had something like that a long time ago, but we don't use that technology anymore. And this is really helpful to help you get past the ATS system. So I'm going to upload a resume that I've saved here, if I can find it. And then I'm going to go to a job description. And I'm going to do a little scan here. So this is for an internship. I'm a little bit older than that. So I wouldn't expect the best result, but this is what I got, 41. And basically what it does is it breaks information down for you, and I'll show you some things that it does, and I'll also upload a different resume to just give you a sense of what it can do. So it'll tell you some ATS tips. So I believe I put in an address for this job in the past. So if you have like a job information about the website, this particular tool will tell you the ATS system, if they can find it, which they usually can, that this particular company uses. And there are several ATS systems, and they're all a little bit different. So like Brass Ring is what this company uses, and they don't recognize different tenses or abbreviations or acronyms of skills and keywords. So you'd really want to spell everything out for this particular company so that they knew what something meant. So instead of saying ATS, if that was something that was important on the job description, you'd say applicant tracking system. So it's important, if you can, to get the website in here so that that gives you a little bit of extra information about how to tailor the resume. But they tell me they found a summary. They like my section headings. This resume that I put in here doesn't have the job title of the job that I'm applying to. And then they want me to do something different with my date formatting, my education works. And then I think this is also really cool, the hard skills section. So inside of the job description, it'll tell you, if I can move this over a little bit, how many times something is mentioned in the job description itself. So human resources is listed 3 times in the job description. I have it 6 times on my resume. Management is listed 3 times. I have it 13. That might be a little overkill. Marketing 3 times. I have it 2. So whenever something is mentioned many times, if you have the opportunity, meaning you have that skill or experience, it would be a really good idea to put it on your resume. When you get down to the ones that are kind of like a 1, it's more of a nice to have, all of those. Some of this I definitely could add based on my experience, so I probably would try to do that. A 41, we try to tell people to get at least above 50. 70 is really good, but your goal is not necessarily to get to 100. It's just to get more of a match. And I do know people that have gotten interviews with 50 or above, so that works too. So I would probably want to get it to 50 if I could. So that's just an example of kind of the hard skills. I don't have any of the soft skills listed that they wanted. So that would be a really good opportunity for me to add some information that I don't have currently on my resume to make my score better. And then they give you some recruiter tips. So job level match, probably not the right one. My word count, I have a 2-page resume because I've been around for a while. They don't like some of my layout. They're not sure about some of my font and my page setup they like. So that gives you an example. And then a little bit of, yeah, on the page setup piece. So there you have it. So if I wanted to kind of do something different the next go round, and I would recommend that you just edit outside of the tool and then upload a new version, which is what I did before our little time together today. So I'm going to pick the second version of this. If I can find it here. Hang on. Okay. Too much stuff here. It will not let me copy. How weird. There we go. All I literally did was change one thing on this resume. But that one thing did make a difference. So I got myself to 49. The only one thing I did was add the title of the job to the top of my resume, which is pretty amazing. So something to consider. So there you have it. That's a very quick demo of JobScan. And I will stop and see if anybody has any questions on that or anything else.
Nothing in the chat, but I did put all the links in.
Okay.
Hi, this is Maria. I have one quick question.
Yeah.
I noticed in the side by side where you put the resume and the job description, when you cut and paste, you're losing all the fonts and other formatting. But isn't that part of the check that the ATS does?
That is part of the check. One thing I did do from one to the other is I took out like I changed all of my like squares to dashes, and that definitely helped. So that is something that it will check that out. It definitely.
Okay, but not necessarily the consistency of, font and type
It
of and
it it
position.
it may not. It will if you do the other, where you use a resume that you upload. I just think the scan on that is a lot harder. It's just better to use your own document and not just cut. It's better to cut and paste than to upload something because the upload sometimes makes it 2 pages and it's really not. I've had a lot of problems with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've got another hand here. I think
Uh,
Mike.
hi, Noah. Actually, I just typed my question on the chat. So basically, my question is very simple. It's just about the expected matching rate. So what percentage do you think we should optimally have in order to apply for a specific position?
I think you should try to get to 50 or above.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I can't promise you that that's gonna happen. I wish I could, because if I could promise you, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. You just go out and have 50 and then you'd have a job.
Yeah,
But
no worries.
yeah,
Mhm.
50 or above. Uh-huh.
Yeah, just an estimation. Try to give you some confidence, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can get higher than that, it's better, but I don't want any of you to think that you need 100%.
Of course not. Thank you.
Right? Yeah. And just along those lines, you're not asking this question, but I'm just going to say it. Even if you don't think that you have the skills and experience to, the skills, obviously, if they want you to graduate at a certain time and you don't, then you probably shouldn't apply, because they're really wanting somebody that graduates at that time. But say you're a sophomore and you're applying for a job description that says they want somebody who's a junior. Well, I know a lot of sophomores who've gotten internships that were for juniors because they have a great resume. So please don't choose yourself out. Let the company choose not to move forward with you. Don't you decide that you're not the right fit. Let them decide that, because you'd be surprised at what might happen if you just put yourself out there. Will it always work? No, but it's worth taking that risk for something that you really want. And job descriptions are it on a good day, because I have been a recruiter and so has Colleen, they are a best case scenario. You never get every single thing that you want in somebody that you hire. It just doesn't happen. So I don't want you to pull yourself out of something that might actually work out. Okay?
Couple more questions, Noelle.
Yeah.
Someone missed what you did with the job title, where you put it on your resume.
Oh, yeah, I'll show you. I put it right here, business HR generalist, right at the very top.
Perfect.
Okay.
And then, is it better to apply to fewer companies with a more tailored resume than applying to a larger number of companies with a general resume?
Yes. That is a very good question, and the answer is yes, because believe it or not, you'll show up as somebody who's done the work most of the time if you do for fewer and they're tailored than if you just splash a bunch of stuff out there. I would start with your top, top jobs you want to go after, and then kind of add more as things get eliminated. But that tends to work out better. I don't usually hear much success from people who said, "Oh, I applied to 100 jobs." They don't usually get anything because their resume is too general and they haven't put in the work. So put in the work and make sure that you're researching the company and those kinds of things so that you're ready to go. Anything else, Colleen?
Is it really required to tweak your resume every single time, or does it purely depend on the requirements of the job?
I would say it depends on the job description and the requirements, but most of the time that means you're going to have to tweak at least something. I'm not saying you tweak everything, like I said earlier, but you're probably going to tweak some things.
That's it for now.
That's it. Okay. All right, let me go back to my slides here. Okay, just to help you even more with JobScan, because I don't work for JobScan, and neither does Colleen, so we know enough to be dangerous, and we've used it some, but we definitely want to make sure that you hear it right from them. So we have a virtual JobScan webinar that Colleen has arranged for Tuesday, October 21st, and that's at 6 p.m. and you can register in Handshake. And this is the agenda that they're going to cover. You can also, we haven't even gone there, but you can also work on cover letters, and there's a way to track jobs inside the system. So today I'm specifically just talking about resumes. Okay. There are some other resources that you might think about. I would imagine most of you know this, but maybe not. Definitely use ChatGPT for support too. So, you know, that allows you to review your resume for different qualities like clarity, formatting, impact. Um, it will also help edit your bullets to make them be more results driven. So like if you're having trouble writing a bullet, might be a good idea to stick it in ChatGPT and see if it can help you word it a little bit better. That's always helpful. And then you know, you might also discover some skills that are kind of related to your field of study and your experience just by using ChatGPT. I guess the thing I would just be, you know, make sure you're careful of with ChatGPT as well as JobScan. Um, really pay attention to what it's saying and make sure that whatever you put on your resume is for real, because anything that's on your resume is fair game for somebody to ask you about in an interview. So you don't want to put something that's not accurate on your resume and then find yourself like not able to talk it through in an interview, because then your chance is gone. So there you go. So don't put anything down that's not the truth, but absolutely use the tools to help you put something together that will make your resume more powerful. There's also, this will probably eventually go away because all of these AI tools will take it away, but this is still a really good tool called the Muse, and there's a lot of really great articles and information about writing resumes in this tool online. So I highly recommend the Muse as something to use to help you. And then I thought I would shift to recruiting timelines. So I'm going to start with kind of like a general timeline. And so you can kind of see like consulting. So if you're interested in consulting started, those jobs started being looked for in May of this past year for the following year. So for summer of 2026, for hiring in 2026, stuff like that. And then there are some kind of more general business that may have started they start a little bit later. And then you can see like arts, culture, media, entertainment, that starts even later. So, you know, if you are, you know, something like a psychology major and you're looking for something in marketing, or I don't know what you're doing, because psychology, you could be doing all kinds of different stuff. You know, don't compare yourself to an accounting major who some of those internships started looking for people a year and a half before they needed them. So you want to make sure you're not comparing yourself to people that are not doing what you're doing, because it's not going to help you. You're just going to feel bad and feel like you're behind when you're just fine because your jobs haven't been posted yet. So these are some things to just keep in mind. It's never too late to start. Even if you think you're too late, just get started. That's all of you are getting started, or you would not be on this call. So that's the good news. Yay. So that's the general timeline. And then I have a more business specific timeline that's a little bit more around like retail and marketing, merchandising and marketing. There are some leadership development programs. You can see like some of these happen kind of all year. I mean, this just goes on all the time. Certainly smaller companies will maybe not have as aggressive of a timeline because they need people when they need people. Whereas like a larger company will want to do recruiting sooner than later because they may have 15 or 20 or 30 positions to fill, and they're trying to make those hires earlier in their cycle for the summer or for people that are graduating. So this just gives you some ideas of when things are happening. So I'm going to stop there and see if any questions came up or anything around recruiting timelines, which I figured they might.
Yes, a couple other questions. Is it appropriate to provide a new version of your resume at an interview if you've made changes which may affect the hiring selection?
Yes, I think that's a great idea. And actually, even if you don't have changes to make to your resume, if you're in a situation where you're in person with someone, bring your resume with you, because who knows how many people might be interviewing you? Maybe it's just one, maybe it's five, but maybe not everybody has a copy of your resume. So I would bring a few copies with you so that other people can see it if they have not already had that opportunity. And certainly if something has changed between the time you applied and you're interviewing, absolutely bring an updated version for sure. Great question.
I did put the link in here, but there is a question about if the session is recorded and when it will be available.
I will get it posted by Friday, maybe even today, but I'm not going to promise you that. But I will promise you by Friday it'll be up.
In your opinion, is it a bit late for the consulting opportunities at this time?
Um, well, it's not early. You're getting towards the end. So if you're really interested in consulting, you need to start doing something now. I don't know what the latest deadline is. You might follow a resource called Management Consulted. They can charge you a lot of money for things, but their free resources are really good. I think it's managementconsulted.com.
I'll put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat. Okay, great. And their free resources are really good. And I think they do, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at it in a couple weeks, but I think they do have recruiting timeline, deadline stuff in there. So there will
Okay.
still be some in September, but you're getting towards the end of the bigger companies. Now, with smaller companies, you might have opportunities long after that. So not sure what you're trying to do, but get on it.
Okay, does it make sense to apply for internships as a freshman with little to no experience, or am I wasting my time?
Good question. I will set the expectation that it will be harder for you no matter what you do because you are a freshman. However, I don't think it's necessarily a waste of time because you never know. And I'm not looking at your resume, so I don't know what you've done that may relate to what you're trying to do. Um, I think the good thing about starting early and young is that you start building a reputation with people and you start building your network. And building your network is really important. So maybe you don't qualify for something right now, but next year or the year after, now this person's seen your resume. And if you're a persistent person, which if you're a freshman on this call, you probably are, then you have set yourself up for somebody to kind of be keeping an eye on you. So I think it's probably worth doing. But one of the things that this workshop is not about this, but one of the things that I would really recommend is that you use the opportunity as a freshman for sure to network and start finding out about what people do and having what are considered career conversations. There is a link on our job prep toolkit um, and I think Colleen's probably already put that in the chat. So you might want to check out the building your network tab so that you can learn how to do career conversations. And certainly you can make an appointment with somebody in our office, myself or someone else, to talk to you about how to do that effectively. Because a lot of times if you're a freshman, you'll get a job as an intern for a freshman because of people that you know, like because you've networked, because your parents know somebody. My first job in college was my dad got me connected to someone. So parents are helpful, or friends of parents are helpful. So definitely, I would say go for it. Just know that it might not turn out and don't take it personally. You just need to age. That's all that needs to happen.
Definitely. Here's a more specific question. So if people have applied to campus jobs on Workday, and they want to make some changes to the resumes that they've already submitted, should they withdraw their applications or just now moving forward use their new resume?
That's a really good question. I don't think I would withdraw my resume because then
That's
that
what I
takes
was
you out of
thinking.
the running. So you should stick with that. Um, I mean, this may not go over well with every department, but one thing you might consider is if you apply to something and you haven't heard back and you know that it's still open, I might just take a new resume to the place that you've applied to and just say, "Hey, I applied to this role. I have a new updated resume. I just want to make you aware of." that might be a really good way to do it. Since you're on campus and these jobs are on campus, it's easier to do that. That would be what I probably would recommend. I don't know if Colleen has another opinion, but that's my thought.
I was thinking the same. Yeah, I wouldn't withdraw your application because that would then move you to the bottom of the list. And usually the way people look at it is as soon as resumes come in, they're looking at them. So you don't want to be at the end. But definitely emailing your resume over to the department if you can get even a general inbox or a person's name, obviously, would be ideal, with the intent that you've made some changes to your resume. So you want to make sure they have the most updated copy. I agree.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm new to the quarter system. Should I go for a campus job in the quarter or should I wait for the next year to try that as an engineering major?
I think, well, it depends. Like if you think you're able to manage doing a job and doing the quarter system, then I would look for a job now. And if it doesn't turn out, then I would look for a job again. Typically, the way I've experienced it on campus in terms of campus jobs is that there are jobs that are open at the beginning of the fall quarter. That's when there's a lot of hiring for students going on. And then usually like around from maybe March until the end of the school year, there's also another round of hiring that happens. There isn't as much like in January or any of those times. Like even in our office, we hire all of our people to start in the fall, but we hire them in the spring. So, and we don't have many. So we did all that, last April and May. I'm going to try to get a jump start on it and do it in March this year. So but anyway, that's kind of my thought around that. You're more likely to find something now than you will be in November. Um, so just a thought. Is there anything else?
There were a couple other questions about finding jobs and internships specifically in tech or engineering. So I did link the job board directory, which has some more sort of unique job boards that people could take a look at. So that's in there. Um, and a question about on-campus jobs. Are on-campus jobs found in Workday? The answer is yes, they are all in Workday.
Yep.
Um, I have another open-ended question for you. Do you think consulting as an industry has a future due to the AI influence?
Um, Man, if I had a crystal ball. Yes, I do. I mean, it may be harder as an entry level to get a consulting job over time, but one of my best friends is a consultant and he's got a big future. A couple of students that have worked in our office have gone into consulting. They have a big future. So I do think so. I just think it's going to look different, but I could not tell you exactly what that's going to be yet. We're all trying to figure that out, including the consulting firms. But yes,
Exactly, exactly.
consulting. The reason why I think that is because there's a people component to it.
Mhm.
And, it's not just rote da 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 da. There's a people component to it. Just like my job, it has a people component, and AI isn't going to take all of that away. So,
Perfect. Another question about on-campus jobs. Some of them do not have deadlines. Um, I'll just go ahead and answer this one because it's a little bit longer, but I would recommend that you apply as soon as you see it. So if you want to have your resume reviewed, definitely go ahead and set up a Zoom resume review with an appointment with any of our staff members now. But I wouldn't wait until school starts to apply for an on-campus job in Workday. Students are applying now, and if you wait, you'll be at the end of the list and you want to be at the beginning of the list. And I'll
that's
put the link to handshake appointments again.
true for every job, not just jobs on
Okay, definitely.
something I thought of saying earlier and then I forgot. When you see a job open, you should apply right away. Don't wait. Like, I don't care if the closing is 7 months from now. That's if they don't fill it. So don't count on them not filling it, especially in today's market. You want to be right up there, right in the beginning.
Perfect. And our wonderful colleague Mary just added a Zoom link from our AI workshop that was a few weeks ago. Some great information in there. And one of the consulting AI leaders actually spoke about the future of consulting. So thank you, Mary, for adding that to the chat.
Yeah, that's a great ad. That was a good webinar. All right. We've been answering questions, but I want to make sure, since we're getting to the end, here are just some recommended next steps. So definitely make any necessary changes to your resume and feel free to use our resources that I've showed you. I highly recommend having an appointment, or we have resume review tables that will start the first week of school. There'll be, one or two a week, but they'll be advertised, so you'll see those. We also have something called career advice support hours in each of the colleges. So I do one a week starting the first week of school. I can't remember the date that I have. I think it's Thursday, but I sit over in Lucas Hall, right by the stairs. So I can trip you as you're coming up and get you to talk to me if you want to. And my colleagues also that support the other colleges do the same. They sit in a different place, but they also would love for you to talk to them. So if you have a quick resume question or whatever, or you want to talk for a minute, we'll definitely help you there too. So just, please get your resume reviewed. That's the saddest thing for me when I see a student who's done a lot of work and never had their resume reviewed. And if they had just had their resume reviewed in the beginning, it would have been a different outcome for sure. So anyway, and use JobScan too. It's definitely helpful.
Also within Handshake, question about how to find internships, and I would recommend that you set up a job alert for the specific type of internship you're looking for. Again, if you don't know how to do this, please go ahead and schedule an appointment with any of the staff members. You can even do what's called a Career Center Basics appointment with a student worker who can help you with sort of the details of Handshake. And again, that's all through that Handshake appointment button. We are doing appointments now. We do them all summer on Zoom and also in person once school starts. But Zoom appointments right now are available.
Thank you all so much for coming today.